artists and animators, and welcome to this afternoon's Toon Boom interview. Chris Copeland is a director with 12 years of experience in animation who is joining us on today's stream to discuss the craft of directing and storyboarding for animated productions. So welcome to the stream, Chris.
Man, thank you so much for having me. This is a distinct honor, man. If you look at my Instagram or Twitter feed or anything, you'll see that Toon Boom has a residence in my creative process, a very strict and stern residence. I do everything, all of my drawings and everything in Toon Boom, because when I'm boarding, I'm like, just get right in, and if I want to sketch, move my panel over and draw. And so it's really special to have you guys ask me to come and speak on your platform. I really appreciate it.
We're very flattered. For viewers, I'm sure many of our viewers are familiar with your work, but we'd like to mention some of the productions that you've either directed or boarded for.
Yeah, absolutely. So my career started at Warner Brothers on the direct video line of DC animated superhero movies. My first one was oh gosh, Under the Red Hood. That was my first one that I was storyboard revisionist on, and storyboarded on a lot of those. The last thing that I boarded on at Warner Brothers was Young Justice season 3 before going on to direct at DreamWorks on Kipo and the Age of Wonderbeasts for Netflix, and then heading over to Skybound, where my brother and I, our first of many collaborative ventures, were supervising on Amazon's Invincible animated show with Robert Kirkman and those guys. And since then, I've been directing, developing, and producing back at DreamWorks Feature. So it's been, I mean, I missed out on the Transformers Prime, storyboard revising on that, and I can go down the long list. It's been a fun 12 years now, which is still bananas to me.
Yeah, so one thing I noticed about like your very extensive IMDb page is that you have been working in like long form adult animated series for a while now, and it's getting a lot more attention. But I wondered if you have any thoughts about the state of I know adult animation can be a contentious term, but the extent of animation for not children.
Yeah. I think, I mean, I just at the core, I'm a storyteller. That's what I'm always venturing to do, is figure out cool and imaginative ways to tell the stories that I feel are fun and exciting and interesting. And so in terms of adult animation, I just feel I am a big fan of it, because again, it is taking down any parameters that can serve as a limitation within animation. I just feel like we have this amazing sandbox to play in to build our stories. And I feel like when you're talking adult animation, you're basically going, okay, how do we take these things and do them in a way that is animated? And when you do that, you're exploring and experimenting with elements that I think feeds the entire beast. I think you start venturing into anything, you're feeding the big monster. And to me, that's what it's all about. So I'm a fan of it myself.
All right. So the reason I brought you onto this discussion is I really want to ask you, what do you do? How would you describe the day-to-day roles and responsibilities of a director on an animated production?
It's crazy now. I mean, I feel like when you're storyboarding. I remember when I got in, and I remember the first time I heard the phrase pencil mileage. And that was from lead designer on Young Justice and close friend and mentor of mine, Phil Barassa. And I remember Phil was talking about pencil mileage, this thing, pencil mileage. He was just like, man, storyboarding is great because you're going to get pencil mileage. And I was like, I don't know exactly what that means. And then after a month, I was like, oh, I know what that means. It means you draw a lot. And that was those first stages as a revisionist and storyboard artist, is you're just drawing and drawing and drawing, and you're burned out. You're like, oh my God, I just want to take a break. Now, as a director, and development and a producer, you spend so little time drawing, and you're sitting in multiple meetings, constantly sitting in meetings, whether it's story or production of some sort. You're with our designers and our artists, or talking to some of the executives at the studio and catching them up on certain progress you made. And all you're dreaming of, if you're somebody like me, is drawing. And that's what a lot of my day is finding those little moments where I can get a drawing down. But for the most part, it's my brother and I sitting with our team and constantly finding story, figuring out the story, identifying the story, and you spend a lot of time doing that because you then take that into your designer meetings. Once you unmind some of the mind out some of these story elements, all of a sudden your designs begin to get some inspiration and some rhythm to them. And so it's a lot of meetings and really talking through and reminding ourselves of the vision, reminding ourselves of the core of the story. And that's what a lot of it is for my brother and I. And then yeah, like I said, you get those moments where you can draw. And those are the fun, like, yes, here we go, get into that. So that's what a day-to-day is. A lot of the meetings, talking through the stuff, and then seeing it and then eventually going like, oh, there's the thing that we talked about an hour ago. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and the cool thing about pre-production too is it tends to be a very iterative process. A lot of
Yeah.
changes tend to happen early on
God,
because you don't want them to happen later.
oh my God, yeah. I mean, yeah, if you're it's the measure twice, cut once, and building these things, you are the entire process, the line gets sort of blurred. Like, are we measuring or cutting right now? Because you're just going like, build it. Let's see. Now let's try something else. But the beauty of that is, from Tuesday to Wednesday, you can have this epiphany where you're like, oh my God, like that thing feels better. It feels more solid. And again, speaking to the beauty and I'll call it even the privilege of animation, is that you can do that. You know what I mean? Like, I can't call Brad Pitt back to set without spending $12 million. You know what I mean? Like, but in animation, I can go like, yeah, you know what? Toss that. Let's redo it in a different way. And so it is iterative, and you're always finding something new and fantastic. Even after your screening, when the movie is in theaters, and you're like, damn it, oh, like that's it. But you get more ideas, and you hopefully take that energy into the next venture.
Yeah. And you always sort of hope that every time you pass it off to the next person, that there's a little bit extra being added on, a little bit more polish and shine.
Absolutely.
I know that for on the pre-production side, storyboard artists have a lot of responsibility in production these days. Is there
Hmm.
anything that you want
Hmm.
to talk about in regards to some of the things that storyboard artists are responsible for?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you hit it on the head right there with that idea of passing it on and going, okay, you know, what's your input here? I storyboard artists, they're on the front line of that, and to take a script from words to visual requires a level of discipline. It requires a level of exploration, a heavy desire to explore concepts and ideas. And so the great thing about our productions at DreamWorks is, by the time we've sat through these meetings that we sit through, where we're talking the story and putting some of these beats down in word, the excitement in ourselves, my brother and I, who come from a storyboarding background, is like, oh man, like, I can't wait to take and flesh this idea out, to give it to your storyboard artist. And it's such a collection of people of so many different walks of life that you're just like, okay, here's what I'm thinking. You hand it to them and they send you something back, and you're just like, sometimes it has nothing of what you were thinking in there. And you're just like, but this hammers home exactly what I was hoping for it to hammer home. And so it's a beautiful marriage of the desired, the unknown, and the unforeseen. Those all come together in this really cool, exciting way in the storyboarding process. And so I enjoy that. I enjoy it as a director who's getting boards, but also as a board artist who's like, oh, let me see what I can find in this. And the collaboration in it is so exciting.
Chris, we got a question in the chat from Jeff Feller who's asking, do you think that a director without animation experience can successfully direct animation?
I think so. I think so. I mean, the job of a director is to direct the vision, is to take a look at stuff, piece it together and go, oh, this is missing this. I'm foreseeing this. I'm foreseeing that. And I don't think that you necessarily have to have the artistic chops to do that. If you have a vision, I feel like you can sit with the team. You better be ready to collaborate. You better be ready to, you know what I mean, like figure out a lot of things in the editing room. But I definitely think it's possible. I think in that regard, there's a separate little strength that could come from that, where you are not so beholden to the drawings as much as some directors can be, and so you're just going like, look, nothing is sacred until it does the job, and having that state of mind can really help process. So yeah, I definitely think so.
Oh, that's interesting.
Hmm.
Um, I want to ask you too about what your experience was like collaborating with your brother on animated projects.
Horrible. It was terrible. Like it was scary. He's no. It's been phenomenal, man. Like my brother is my homie. Like we really are close friends, and we finish each other's sentences and everything. He's 15 months older than me, and so we grew up, you know, drawing together and getting in all sorts of trouble and everything together with our separate passions. Growing up, Justin was constantly. We had this broke old Bolex camera that did not work. We were broke as heck, but he was always behind it, pretending like he's filming something. And me, I was always, tagging somewhere, doing some graffiti or something like that. And so we knew each other's creative inklings and inclinations were different, and we always sort of respected that. I love seeing the stuff that he would create, and he loved seeing the stuff that I would create, and we would offer each other feedback. And that is the exact rhythm that we have now. It is not to say that there are definitely times where Justin and I have differing opinions or perspectives about something, but he knows for a fact, 100% beyond any shadow of a doubt, that I have no agenda outside of us trying to get the thing done, and vice versa. I know that he has no arrogant, like, yo, let me chop this dude up. Like it literally is, we respect each other's lanes, and we're able to sort of go like, yeah, no, I don't know if I see it that way. And what it calls you to do is really assess like your core values and go like, do I really care about that thing as much as he does? And sometimes it's like, nah, I don't. And sometimes it's, yeah, I do. Let me propose it to him and see if we can find a good medium. And that's what it is all the time, pushing each other creatively on a foundation of love and respect that we have for each other. And that's the way that we build the stuff that we build together. It's been really awesome.
Yeah, I think collaboration is a skill that a lot of artists struggle to foster sometimes.
Yes.
How do you approach projects, divide tasks, and resolve conflicts when working together with Justin?
Honestly, it's there are times where it's like, you know what, I feel a certain way about the thing that he feels like we should do. So I need to spend some time really assessing and figuring out why I feel that way, and finding the core of my stress or agitation or whatnot. It's very, very rare that happens. But what I do find in terms of Justin and I and our collaborative process is we foster an atmosphere of collaboration no matter what. In every conversation, every dialogue that we have, we're fostering an atmosphere of collaboration. And when you're trying to hear and see everyone on your team, it calls you to go like, let me make sure that I'm doing that with my partner, my creative partner, my director. And so, as much as we will, give each other brother nudges, like, oh, that's dumb or that's weird or whatever. It is never at the expense of, I truly, truly feel like I know him, I see him, and I can go like, he's not trying to he's not trying to disrupt anything. He really wants to know how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. And so there is this level of transparency and honesty that we have with each other that just, it helps the process so much, man. Like I just don't have to, I can just go to him and be very, very honest with him of like, yeah, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm thinking. And again, the desire is for that sentiment to permeate our whole team, our producers, our art team, our board guys. Like, how can we really see each other, trust each other in a way that we can be honest with each other without feeling like it's going to come back to bite us in any way down the line. Like that type of stuff we do away with. And we try to set a tone. We're the stage act, Justin and I. We're going like, see, this is what we do. And hopefully it permeates the entire team.
Yeah, I asked you a little bit about this before, but how do you feel that the audience for adult animation has developed over the past 5 years?
I mean, honestly, I think it's an interesting time we're in. I think creatively, as an African American creative in the United States in particular, I'm we're born and raised in Chicago, in the rough area of Chicago. The desire has always been to feel seen and welcomed and heard, on every level, socially, creatively. And I think we are beginning to, like, the voices are getting loud with that desire. And the beauty of that is that, again, as a African American creative, I have a team at DreamWorks that truly authentically sees me and hears me all the way up the ladder. They see us and they hear us from day one. That feels amazing. What it also does is it offers an opportunity to create new things. It offers an opportunity to create things that haven't been created over and over and over throughout the history of entertainment. I think likewise with adult and animation of any sort, what it allows is a new perspective, a new creative perspective. And I think any audience is going to want to have a new, cool, fun, exciting experience, or interesting, to say the least. So my hope is that that desire for fresh, new, inventive, that desire stays alive and active on every front, from social movement to creatively what we're consuming. We want to do things new. Shouldn't we do things new? We can't just keep rehashing the same narratives over and over again. It's boring. Do new stuff and get people interested. Even if you don't know what that new stuff is going to look or feel like, try it out. That's how this industry was birthed anyway. So I'm hoping that the audience has that sort of resonance. That's my hope.
Yeah, one thing I've noticed is like you've done a lot of work with superhero comic characters.
Yeah.
Where do you feel that there is a lot of appetite for superhero comics, and what kinds of stories can you tell with superheroes?
Man, that's a really good question. For me, I think I've talked about this. Justin and I talk about this a lot as we venture into writing and creating content of our own, and hand in hand and in tandem with the social outcry of like equality and being seen and being heard. I've talked about it a couple of times where I said, like, the beauty of the industry right now, as we're transitioning into a more universal voiced, universally voiced community with African Americans and minorities as a whole in the LGBTQ plus community. I think the beauty of it is take a franchise like, for instance, take a franchise like Alien, the Aliens franchise, where this team goes up in the space and they fight this alien, yada yada yada. If you took a franchise like that and you have a creative that is African American, and you go, I go, okay, I truly love and appreciate and value my cultural backdrop. If you take that respect, adoration, appreciation of the cultural backdrop and you swap out your main character with an African American character now, that story can change in a really cool, fun, and interesting way. Like, little decisions that were made in that movie all of a sudden go into a different direction. Now that's a like smaller, minimal way to put it, but I think the beauty of content is that right now, having the ability to take anything and repurpose the core of it will give you a broader, bigger, wider, like more fruitful sort of output. So I think content is going to really, I think if we can keep ourselves in that place of like really truly loving, respecting, and honoring our individual cultures and trying to figure out more about the other cultures around us. I think if we push and pull from that, I think we're getting to see some really cool and amazing stuff, from creatives all over the place. So that's my little excitement, little dream that
Yeah, I mean,
I've
there's so many
seen.
people who haven't had a chance to tell their stories, and I
Yeah,
think it's cool we can get a more expansive view of that. Uh,
absolutely.
this is like totally a tangent, but like one thing I noticed about like superheroes, right? They're very visually striking,
Yes.
and like stylistically, they all kind of inherit a lot from Superman, who was
Hmm.
wearing like a circus weightlifter costume from like the
Yes.
1930s. So we have all of these characters who are
Hmm.
dressed like circus strong, people, and acrobats. And
Yeah.
I don't know how many people who have like regularly go to circuses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I sort of wonder, in terms of like things that exist now, what is going to be like visually really influential that
Yeah.
nobody will have any idea of like where it came from.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's it is pretty insane. I still love the original Superman design a lot. It's the
It's
weird. I mean,
iconic.
even it's iconic as hell. And even Captain America, they rock it, and it's like, oh man, it's super dope. I think in line with what I was just talking about in terms of the many different voices that we are beginning to sort of hear and see from. I think if we're building and leaning into the superhero world in that way of going like, well, what is this, trans woman from, I don't know, Connecticut? What does she have to say about a superhero? What does a superhero look like to that person? Well, I think from there, you're all of a sudden venturing into another area of like, oh man, it's gonna feel interesting because a part of that story is gonna build why that character looks the way that they do. And I think if we can keep that level of discipline where it's like, you know, without it getting boring. I don't want to see design quirky and weird is just cool as hell. Sometimes it's fun. So I think without it getting boring, I think, but if we can find a place and as designers and visionaries to go like, the story that I'm telling needs for me to design this character in a certain way so that they can really be spelled out in the way that I want them to. I think that's just interesting. That's par for the course. I think that's the exciting part of it all. Is how does that suit or design tell a part of the story that you're trying to tell. I think that's really compelling and cool.
Do you think part of the reason why like superhero stories get like retold and reinvented is that anybody could have a superhero origin story? If
Yes.
radioactive spider bites someone else,
Yes.
suddenly you're Spider-Man.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the cool part of it. I mean, and it's all movie magic too, right? Like it's crazy what you can get an audience to perceive and believe by getting them to look over there and then look back at the thing that they were just looking at. You can shift their state of thinking, like if I have a character here and he's doing A, and then I have a thing that motivates this person to look over here, and then when they look back, this character is doing B now. There is no, it's just like, wait a second, answer that for me. Tell me about that. And those little, that's the beauty of cinema. That's the beauty of animation too, right? Is that these stories that we are going to get to tell, it's not just predicated on the mechanics and like, some of the semantics of it. It's also predicated on the movie magic of it all, the animation of it all. And that's the reason why when I talk about adult animation, I'm just like, if that's going to unlock another thing that lets us connect with these characters, connect with these moments, then I'm just like, unlock all of it. Let's go and let's see what we can do with it. And definitely with superheroes, because we've had a lot. We've had a saturation of superheroes, and figuring out a way to tell those stories now. I'm like, I'm very interested in exploring that more at
Yeah,
some point
so
down the line.
different creators, different audiences, different genres, all of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
There's so much to explore there.
Yeah.
Chris, I wanted to ask you, of the productions that you've worked on, which are you the most proud of so far?
Oh man. Gosh, I'm gonna say what we're doing right now with DreamWorks. And I know, no one has seen any of it, but I previous to this, I've worked on some things that have been very, very exciting. And as you talk about superheroes, I used to have these dreams, these terrible nightmares actually, that our when I was younger, that our apartment would be on fire. And in those dreams, every time Superman would come through and save my entire family. And so superheroes have this very like intimate existence in my life. And then creatively, when you're in the hood in Chicago, a lot of the way that we escaped some of the trappings of the gang life and things like that was having comic books on our table our mom would give us and then trying to draw it. So superheroes and the work that I was able to do on the DC comic stuff was phenomenal and very impactful for me creatively. Directing on Kipo, that was I started on Kipo January 8th of 2018, and I remember that because October of 2017 I got into a near fatal biking accident. You can see my scar. I had to have life saving surgery, and so that one is special to me because that was I don't even know if I can still draw. So waking up and then going like, let me direct on this thing with Red and the homie and the team. It was special for that, and the things that it was able to do as a show was phenomenal. What my brother and I with our team at DreamWorks are doing right now, it's special because it's a culmination of so many of the things that we've experienced married to so many of the exciting things that we have always admired and adored and loved about cartoons or animation. So even just at this juncture, I'm very, very excited and proud of the things that we're able to try and that we have a leadership and you know Margie and Kristen who is like leading the thing that they would have the audacity to be like, yo, let's go, let's see it, let's try it. It does make for something I think really special. So I can't wait to share that with the world.
It's really cool when a studio has confidence in the artists that they've brought in.
Oh man, we like I couldn't speak on it enough, and I hate it. I hate saying it because I remember before I got in the industry, you'd hear some of these interviews where an actor or director is like, "Oh my gosh, I just can't talk enough about her leadership," and you're like, "Whatever, man, shut up. You're saying that because you're rich." I as a person who is a creative in this industry, I have put my foot in my mouth so many times from my Chris of old, and especially with our team that we are working with now, our executives and our studio leads and heads, like they when you talk about being seen, being heard, and being pushed, it is just the perfect mixture of all of it, and it makes us very excited to go to the studio and try things and go like, yeah, let's find some new ways to do some of this stuff, and it's so welcomed and encouraged that it feels really amazing.
What skills and experiences do you feel that artists would need to develop if they are interested in directing?
Yeah, I I would my I would say my younger Chris Copeland when he first got into animation, I would go draw, just draw, know how to draw, which is a big part of it for sure. Um, but what I would say is that as it's a weird thing. Animation is oftentimes we say it a lot. It's a small industry, and it is. A lot of the same people, moving around to different studios. But what I would encourage for anyone who wants to be a director, what I would encourage is an understanding of the pipeline, an understanding of how these things are made, right? Like an understanding of how important your production team is, an appreciation of those things. Um, Find research some of that stuff. It is not just about drawing and making deadlines. It's about truly collaborating with the people around you, being willing to uh, figure out what your line producer does, and not the machinations of it to some crazy extent, but just gain an understanding of that, gaining an understanding of what your art director does, gaining an understanding of what your script coordinator does, what your writers are doing, what that schedule is like, looking at the schedule, knowing that if you're working in 2D and you're working with studios overseas, what is that process like when we quote unquote ship out our episodes to a studio overseas? What's that team doing with it over there? Gaining an understanding of those different things will allow for you. When I got on Kipo, I had to learn a lot. I had to learn a lot because I had just been in an accident, so I'd forgotten a bunch of stuff. But I had to learn a lot because I was new to directing, and directing isn't this oh, he's a masterful storyboard artist, that's why he's moved to directing. Directing is you get that script and you're going, how am I going to bring this to life in a cool, compelling, consistent, exciting way with this team that I have here? How are we going to do this? And so learning a little bit about a whole lot of things on a team will take your experience as a director to another level, for sure.
Do you have any advice for artists who would like to apply to work on productions like Invincible or Kipo as storyboard artists?
Mm-hmm. What's the age old saying? Know your audience. I would say know what the vision of the show is. There's a difference between Cora and Dora, right? They sound alike, but there's a vast difference. And so I would say for the superhero stuff, you know, you don't want to be relegated to a place as a story artist, as a creative. You don't want to be relegated to a place that is defined by your limitations creatively. And so when I remember when I got into animation, I would see storyboards from someone like Joaquim Dos Santos, who is just unreal with what he does with boarding, and seeing that he would have timing notes on there, right? Like he understood 2D timing for animation, and he could, you know, track with his boards in that way. How he was using a SketchUp model to take his background. So does Joaquim know how to draw backgrounds? Absolutely. But knowing what he was pursuing with those characters, he was using whatever elements to get to that and focus in on that. So really understanding what it is that the content of the show that you're going into, and questioning yourself and going like, if I really want to push this content, if I really want to do my part in making this show amazing, what are the things that I'm not equipped with right now that I should probably become familiar with? If it's figure drawing, you know, specific character types, if it is, you know, applications, learning applications, those things will go a long way. Really gauging yourself before jumping in on something like that will help a lot. And drawing, yes, spend that time in breaking down anatomy, finding your shorthand, not the finessed pretty thing. Finding your shorthand. It's the reason why I draw in Toon Boom so much. Just sitting there and finding my shorthand, so that when the clock is ticking, I'm able to get as much economy out of my drawings as possible to accomplish some of these big action set pieces or whatnot. Those things will help a lot.
I know that you mentioned this as sort of a throwaway joke, but I would love to see a Dora the Explorer series drawn by Studio Mir. I think they would do an amazing job.
Honestly, that with Mir, I'm like, yeah, the limitations are endless. That would be phenomenal. When working on The Witcher, I never played The Witcher video game at all. I know a bunch of homies of mine have, but by the time Mir sent me over the design pack before I was boarding, I was just like, I don't care what this thing is. I'm ready to go. And I was playing the game after I got that design pack, because it was for research. Mike, what do you want me to do?
Yeah, and it's an interesting setting. Is there anything that you wish that you knew or that surprised you when you started working in this industry?
Drawing is not everything. That was like oof. Yeah, that was I want to say drawing is not everything, story is everything. And I say that confidently. It's funny, before this speaking, I was at the DreamWorks studio. We had a screening, internal screening, because the movie is not out yet that they're doing, and watching it, and it's the screen. It was phenomenal. Like literally, I was texting Justin, I'm messaging my team, and I'm just going like, oh my God, like I'm inspired. And as I'm looking at it and I'm watching these moments play out, it was these characters that they put into these situations that kept me there. It kept me laughing. It kept me excited. And the drawings and some of the storyboards, because it's an early animatic, so some of it was animated without lighting and texture and whatnot, and some were just storyboards. Some of the drawings were not good drawings, but you can tell the character was emoting. You can tell what emotion, and matched with the music and matched with the moment previous to it and what it was setting up for the moment later on. those elements existed outside of that drawing. And it was just about like, this drawing is in order to facilitate this emotion and this feeling. And all of a sudden it's that thing you're reminded of all the time of like, I am doing this to say something. I am doing this to, it's the campfire theory. I'm trying to compel you and get you excited or afraid or whatever it is. And what things can I use to do that? And we use drawing to do it. So it's remembering that we're trying to get you to a place as an audience, and we're using drawing to do it. I'm not trying to draw something amazing and hoping that it emotes. I'm literally trying to emote, and I'm going to use a drawing to do that. And remembering that and learning that it took me a long time. It took me a long time to go like, oh my God, I got to snap out of that thinking and get into the place of how do I tell this story? How do I make this moment rich or feel, large, bigger than what it is? And eventually, that was the pursuit. So that's the stuff that I've learned in the 12 years.
In your opinion, how much detail or shorthand should be in a storyboard?
Oftentimes I remember when I got in, because of the way that I draw, I remember getting chewed up by my directors. So it's like, draw too clean, draw too clean. It's too clean. It's too clean. I still get questions from board like professionals and people that are pursuing like how clean is too clean, and like yeah. And I remember when I started directing on Kipo, I come up with this term. I said clarity over cleanliness. Like I don't want to use clean anymore. What's clean to me is going to be very different than what's clean to Mike or clean to whomever. And it's just a vague term. Clarity. If it's clear that this character is excited, if it's clear that they are punching, if it's clear, then your job is done. Move on, right? Like that is the mark for me. It's clarity over cleanliness. And so I definitely have more of a shorthand because sometimes you can clean something up too much, and all of a sudden the fluidity of it can get lost if you're over finessing something. And so I definitely pursue the clarity line of things more so now than before. And that's something that I would advise to anyone. Go for clarity. If it's clear, your job is done, move on.
We got a question in the chat that I think I'm kind of embarrassed I didn't come up with it myself. On the production you're currently on, are you all back at the studio or are you still working from home? And if you're working from home, was it challenging working from home?
It was challenging working from home because I got 4 kids, Mike. They're crazy. Like they are crazy. They don't care about what I'm doing. They're like, my 5-year-old would come here and just take a nap and yell at me. So he was a terrible producer. A lot of us are back on campus. My brother and I and some other directors and producers at the studio were given access, early on because the transition was just longer when you're working on something bigger. Transitioning out of the studio required like, okay, you can still come here to do some of that stuff. So right now, I don't know exact percentages, but there's definitely more people back at the studio on a monthly basis, more people coming back in, which feels amazing. I am a big fan of studio atmosphere and the dialogues that get to happen and the excitement. I grew up in a bigger family, so it makes sense. But so we're at that slow rollout pace, and DreamWorks and Universal have been doing a really great job at sort of facilitating a rollback that feels comfortable for everyone, but also that feels exciting for people. So to be back in the studio and see the energy returning, but without feeling like, oh God, is it safe? It definitely has been an exciting season for sure.
Yeah, well, we got a question in the chat, which is, how did you get into storyboarding? When did you realize that was something you wanted to do, and how did you work towards it?
Yeah, I moved out to LA in July 28th, 2009. And before that, I had come out to visit Phil Barassa, the character designer who was at Warner Brothers at the time. We were following each other on DeviantArt. Remember that site? And he hit me up once, and he was just like, "Hey man, if you're ever out in LA, come by and visit. Like you seem like a cool guy." We've been chatting, between that. So I came out to visit, and that was my first time ever being in an animation studio. he took me around Warner Brothers. I got to meet Sam Liu and Lauren Montgomery and Bruce Timm, and I'm just like doe-eyed and excited as all get out. Fast forward, 2009, my wife and I are in Chicago, and we were just like, I was going to school to get my teaching certification for high school. I'm a high school dropout. There's some fun irony there. That's a whole different story. But I was like, I had my kid. My wife and I had our kid, and I was like, I got to get a job. And I would draw at night. One day, my wife hits me up, and she's just like, I think we should really try to move to LA. Like, I don't think you're done with your dream of doing art. And after the visit with Warner Brothers, I was just like, yeah, I agree. And so we saved up whatever money we had. And the thinking was, I'll come out here, I'll work however many jobs, and I'll draw at night and try to break in. So fast forward, July 28th, 2009, we move out here. I literally have applications to Ralph's, Best Buy, and McDonald's. And I'm just going like, I'll work whatever, take care of the family. At night, I'm just not gonna sleep. I'll just draw. Joaquin Dos Santos hits me up and is like, yo, man, if you ever want a chance in getting into animation, he's like, we really think you should try to move out here. Like, it feels like the time is a good time for you to take a jump and move out. And he's like, I'm not promising a job, but I feel like you're a cool guy, you're talented, we might be. I said, bro, I moved out here yesterday. This is literally July 29th that we're having this conversation. He goes, wait, seriously? I go, yeah. He goes, my producer's gonna call you. I hang up the phone. Bobby Page from Warner Brothers calls me and offers me a job as a storyboard revisionist. Literally that following Monday, I started my job. So it's not the Hollywood story of like busting tables and waiting forever. I got in. I was fired December 22nd, 2009, because I was terrible and I had a lot to learn. But that initial hiring and firing together served as like this is definitely what I want to do. In terms of storyboarding, I came out to LA, honestly, I wanted to get into character design because it was all I followed Phil Barassa, and like I was like, oh, this guy is redesigning DC characters in some of the most amazing ways. I want to do that, and that was my pursuit. I didn't know the structure of a studio, man. It's really hard to land a gig as a character designer. I come out, Joaquin goes, hey man, I honestly think you should try to get into storyboarding. He's like, it's a lot of people shy away from action 2D storyboarding because it's hard. But he's like, it means that if you want to try to get into it, it's an easier, door open for you. You should try it out. And I'm like, Joaquin said do it. Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is why I got fired December 22nd of 2009, because it's hard as hell. And I didn't know what I was doing, but that was the start of my career. Honestly, the being let go from Warner Brothers, that was the start of my career, I always say, because it ignited a fire. The transition from Chicago to here was I didn't have that hunger, that like, oh my God. But when you go into the studio and you're there and you're like, oh my, yes, this is it. You're doe-eyed so long that by the time you lock in, they're like, hey, so you're not doing good work at all. And Bobby goes, don't worry about it. You'll be back here one day. Like, this is just part of that process. And when I got let go, that really built the fire in me. And when I started back in February of 2010 on Transformers Prime as a revisionist, I said, like, I'm gonna do it here. This is where I'm gonna really lock in and learn it and figure it out. And that's that was 12 years ago now, and it's been great.
Yeah, I think one thing that people are really hesitant to talk about when they're talking about their careers are failures.
Oh,
But you can learn a lot through.
oh,
I mean, it's the most painful way to learn something, but
oh.
you do it.
Failure is
Um,
the most honest individual we can all. Failure's only agenda is to show you your next level, man. I say it all the time. I say rush to failure. Hurry up, man. And I say it all the time. Nobody's getting the Oscar for their first draft. Like, go ahead, knock that weak, terrible version of whatever you're doing out, and because the mastery is in the revision, and that's I truly believe that, and I talk openly and excitedly about my failures, because those are the things that really got me to a place of like, let me find the next one, because it's just showing me that next level if I can beat it.
I think we have a lot of storyboard artists in the chat right now because one of the comments I see in the sidebar is storyboarding is definitely hard as hell.
Yes, absolutely, it is. If you have a vision, man, it's tough, because having a vision is one thing, and putting it down in a sustainable, practical, economic way that really you know, when you're talking about overseas studios, it's a lot of information. It's a lot of information that needs to be down. Where is this character at? Where are they going? How are they walking? How are they emoting? What setting are they in? What other characters are there? And then when you cut to that other shot, how do you keep that consistent? Are you tracking for all those characters there? And then doing that in a storyboard on a limited amount of time, it's tough. If you want to do it right, it is. It's really tough. But you figure out all of these. It's like that. I always compare it to the Russian puppet, you know, where you take it off and you pull it, and it just. I always like in storyboarding that for some reason, because there's something about like every one of those puppets have to be in their place, and they look different, and you can mix it up early on. But once you figure out, they're like, oh no, it's smaller. It goes into the one that's a little bit bigger, and then it goes into the one that's a little bit bigger, and then, you know, and then you're like, oh, that there it is. It's just making sure you're accounting for all those elements all the time. Before you know it, you have this composed moment. So yeah, it's tough for that.
Yeah, you mentioned that DeviantArt played a role in your experience as an artist early on.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about like how sites like DeviantArt can be useful for artists?
Yeah, absolutely. I foster a very honest and transparent atmosphere on my social media, because it's hard. People talk about a lot, like, man, I got to keep up with that stuff, and I'm like, I don't have to keep up with it if I don't try to keep up with it. It keeps up with me, honestly. I think the social media platform can be a great place to display your work. Can be a great place to talk through some of your thinking, some of the ways that you process certain things that you're doing. I think it could be fantastic for that. I would always warn people, make sure you're controlling it and it's not controlling you. And because it's easy to do that, because it's a platform that where a lot of people, big move makers exist, and there's accessibility to it. We can be beholden to that in a way that really starts to control and dictate our rhythms creatively. I remember Scotty Young, Chicago comic book artist, close homie of mine, mentor, Uncle Scotty, love him to pieces. I remember he said it a long time ago to me, and I didn't get it until you know, later on. But he said, when you take a piece of art and you put it on a social media site and it's getting all the likes and the applause, what it makes you do is you drop your shoulders and you go, ah, yes, there it is. And it begins to dictate your rhythm. It begins to dictate, like, ah, I've done it. I've kind of, like, no, man, like, that's not the end of it. You stay locked in, keep going at it, push it, make sure it gets to that finish line. And I always warn of being careful of that and using it to do the legwork for whatever it is that you're creating, without being convinced that that's the finish line in any way. So that's my perspective on it. I love it though. I met some really amazing people, and again, my career initiating was done on DeviantArt in a lot of ways. So I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, I really love talking to artists and creators who have memories of DeviantArt and
Oh
Newgrounds
man,
and all of these pre-YouTube places where you could share art and animation.
yeah, so fun. It was so different. It's so different. It's evolved, and it's cool as hell. But yeah, it was definitely a different. I was an. I guess we were different. We evolved, and therefore our reception and perspective of the thing has a certain flavor to it. But it was
I
really
mean, it was a
cool.
period of
Really
time
fun.
where the idea of putting video on the internet
Oh
seemed
man.
like science fiction, right? So you
Yes.
you had to
Yeah.
use other ways of getting things up there.
It's pretty crazy. It's pretty crazy. I love being in those early stages of it. It definitely, there was something really special and fun and exciting about it all. And to that end, there's something exciting about what's happening right now with it all, that I'm very interested in seeing how that evolves and begins to play a role in our output, our creative processing.
We're approaching the end of this hour, so I wanted to ask you, Chris, do you have any upcoming projects, events, or productions that you'd like to direct our audience towards?
Yeah, man, I wish I could speak more toward the things that we're developing at DreamWorks, but as you can see, like my brother and I, along with DreamWorks, we've been trying to, you know, really, you know, tiptoe those things out in terms of announcements and things, and we will continue doing that for those properties and projects that we're working on there. My brother and I are working on there's another side venture. I'm like, I can't even mention that yet, but it's going to be something for everyone to experience. It'll be really cool, and I'll announce more of what that is. But for the sake of Justin and I, we did some storyboarding classes, storyboarding, and then drawing for storyboarding, where I'm literally just in Toon Boom drawing and breaking down that process. And if you go to Rad How to Class or How to School, it's on the site. It'll be in the link on all my socials, and you guys can check those out. It's pretty cool. It's just more screen sharing and drawing and sharing some of my process there. But we have a lot of exciting things in the cooker that will definitely be announced very soon, and I'm excited to. I'll be sharing those on all the social platforms for sure.
Yeah, I think I remember seeing you post about some of the storyboard warm-up exercises that you do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are always fun, man. I used to look at warm-ups and I would have this like shame of like, oh God, I should be drawing a storyboard. But the reality is like, you look before a basketball game, they're out there on the court, they're shooting around, you know what I mean? Like it's that thing. And so I value that a lot, because before I go and start storyboarding something out, I just need to find that rhythm and get into that motion. And so sharing a lot of that and what my thinking is behind that process as it leads into my storyboarding was really fun, and I'm looking forward to doing more of those down the line. But the ones that are up on the Rad's site now are pretty cool, pretty interesting stuff.
And we're going to share links, but where can people find you on social media? And is there anybody else that you'd recommend following?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram, Chris Copeland Art, ART, one word, and then on Twitter, Chris Copeland Art, but without the A. So it's Chris Copeland Retweet. I guess that felt cool to me. They didn't. Chris Copeland Art wasn't available on Twitter, but you can find me on those guys, on both those pretty consistently. And then my brother Justin Copeland Art on Instagram, and I believe that he is Justin Copeland Art on Twitter as well. So you can follow us on there and track with our progress for everything that we're doing and venturing into. We're very excited about it all, and like I really can't wait till we can just like sit and share some of the stuff. It's going to be really fantastic.
We'll have to call you back then.
Yeah,
I
please.
want to thank everybody who joined us for today's interview. If you enjoyed this conversation, we also recently published an article on another storyboard artist, Tim Hodge, and his experience teaching the craft of storyboarding, which you can find on our blog at blog.toonboom.com. Next week on our stream, Maria Vlasel will be hosting an art stream sharing workflow tips in Harmony Premium, so be sure to tune in next time.
Oh man, thank you guys so much. Thank you, Mike, and the team at Toon Boom. I'm honored to be an ambassador and to be a part of what you guys are doing, and I'm excited about the future of it and venturing into more stuff with you guys together.